Hi and welcome back into Blockbench. I am Kevin and you are currently watching this snowman in progression. Yes, in the other episode we decided to start modeling out a snowman, and then one episode after that we decided to rework the snowman. Yeah, we were going to put him in a much more grand aspect, and that we did. We put more model details and features onto him. And in today's episode, we're going to put textures onto this guy, but we're also going to do some nifty tricks that I've decided to show you in between where we're working on the textures, for optimization purposes, for example. In between episodes, I've decided to move up the nose just one block. I've added an eyebrow because Minecraft, and I've also a bit of a top hat. Added that to the model itself. Now, if I want to duplicate the left arm, I click Ctrl D or right click and duplicate. Get a left arm 2 here, apparently, but if I go to transform, flip, and flip X, it's going to, and hear me out on this one, it's not only going to remove the 2's, it's also going to call all of the items that are currently here right. You believe me? It happens, just like that. Click. And now we have a right arm with the right elbow and the right hand. Everything is right on that side, trust me. Now I can make a texture for this. I'm going to use a template. I'm going to call this snowman, just like the file we had. Confirm, and I'm also going to remove the power 2 size. Everything seems good in general. Confirm. Here we have it. As you can see up to the left now, the UV is filled with a bunch of information. All of these small blocks has been split into components that you can paint individually. But I then realize I would like to optimize this model slightly before doing that. I, for example, know that I want the left side to look the same as the right side of the model. So how do I achieve that? Well, one way to do it is to not have to paint the right side with the left side. Let's delete all of that. Let's also delete the right arm. And now I'm going to look for components that are individual on the right side that would also exist on the left side. So this one, this one, this one, this one, and of course that part of the hat. All of those are now removed. They don't need to exist on the texture palette because they will use the same textures as the ones on this side, as the arm, for example. So let's create a new texture, call this one snowman. We haven't saved any of this, don't worry about it. Template, confirm, remove power 2 size, and confirm. Now the texture sheet is slightly slimmer. It's not as much going on it. You may not be able to tell, but I can tell who's been doing this for a while, and I know for a fact that it's slightly smaller than the other one. It could also potentially say in the resolution that it is. But now, selecting these elements that I took away, duplicating them, these, like that, click D, and transform and flip, they will now be on this side. And as you can see, apparently this one is red. Red, aha! They're using the same surface of texture on the texture sheet. Alright, so let's pick the left arm as well. Do the same thing there, transform, and now it's going to be right. It's the right arm. Lovely! This is great stuff. Okay, let's get going. So now we have our snowman model here, and it's time to give him some textures. I already know though for a fact that there are some areas on this snowman that we can't texture. For example, the inside of this finger, because, well, we can't see in between the fingers. So one way to walk around that is, while being in edit, move, for example, a finger up while painting those specific surfaces, or to animate the object and then paint things. But we'll get to that further down the line. Let's now not jump ahead of ourselves. Well, I can do that, yeah, of course. You can't see anything of this anyway, so I'm going to save my project, go to save project, and then put it somewhere on your computer. You don't need to see where I'm putting mine, but I'm just going to call this one snowman, the way we wrote it before. Like that, good. Now it said snowman meeple model. And I'm also going to do the same thing for the texture. Well, you see this little icon right here. It says that it hasn't saved the texture on your computer. It's good to save the texture on your computer because you could add a texture into, for example, Photoshop, and do tweaks on the texture there, save the texture, and then reload it into Blockbench and see the updates in real time in Blockbench. So I'm going to save that one as well. I'm going to call it snowman, like this, and it has to be a PNG texture, which of course also Blockbench adds by default. Lovely stuff. Okay, seems like we're good to go with painting. So now we come to a different situation. If I were to put flat colors onto everything, which I'm always doing when I'm starting modeling something out, so I know what is what and how I would like to approach it from there on, this would already look more detailed than the first snowman we did. And how do I know that? Well, you can tell by the silhouette. So let's see here, grab some orange for the nose, do that. And if you remember how I did to paint all of it at a very quick pace, I just clicked and held down while dragging along with the paint bucket tool. There we have the nose. It's all orange and happy. We want to have snow, but I also know that snow is not necessarily completely white. It also has a slight blue tint to it, so I'm going to pick something that is slightly teal, maybe a bit ice-ish, and then closer to the blue here. And then I'm going to do that all over all of the faces that is going to be snowman. Like so, like so. Now, the cool thing is, because I have mirror painting turned on, if you remember from 2 episodes ago, and I'm also have flipped some of these objects. When I turn around, it's also already painted this side. It's lovely, isn't it? Same thing for the back. Like so. Just pulling over some of these extra surfaces underneath as well, because, yep, you gotta brush your armpits, little snowman. That's just a way of life. Same thing here, the chin, and underneath the chin. Yep, see, we missed one. There we have missed one. Moving about, the arms are not supposed to be white, and I can also see that we did a bit of a fuck up on the nose, but don't worry, we got that sorted. Now, the main bulk of the snowman has turned white, and suddenly he looks a lot more like a snowman than compared to before, doesn't he, right? This is kind of cool. Now, I also know that I want the hat to be like a black, I guess. Not necessarily completely black, so I'm going with like a darker gray. You can go darker gray with whatever color you have, as long as you're on this side of the screen with that. Darker gray. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing. Pull and paint, pull and paint, pull and paint, pull and paint. And on the back, pull and paint, pull and paint. And remember, if you do something like, whoops, did that, Control Z, or whoops, that, edit, undo. Or if you want it to be there, redo, undo. Good. We got the hat there. Now let's find a color for the arms. I'm going to go with a brown, which I know is something you find on the orange scale, and then you go into a bit like the gray tone right here. And I'm going to do that as the same thing. Pull that all over the arms, like so. And like a so. And like a so. And underneath, like a so. Oh, seems like we missed that side as well. Now, all in all, one could argue that this snowman is already much more alive than the one we did before or previously. But I would argue that we can do a lot more to bring life into this snowman. Because if I were to go into edit, we can start looking and feeling it. It's an interesting guy, isn't it? He could do a lot, I guess, especially when we animate him. I also made sure that we could animate the hat separately from the rest of the body. You never know why, right? But you could. All of the body components are animatable. But regardless, we're going to go back into paint, and now let's start working on some of the things that are called shadings. Yeah, shadings. Essentially trying to figure out what part of these, like, well, of this model wouldn't necessarily, when light is coming down from above, have as much light, like, well, affecting it. So I'm going to go with a slightly darker blue, bit grayish here, and I'm going to add it under the eyebrow, and then a bit down below. So now the eyebrow is somewhat shadowing the surface below. I'm also going to go with that the entire neck right here is not lit up. Same thing with underneath here. I could essentially just use the paint bucket for that. And I'm also going to assume that potentially we could add a bit of like a shape to the corners of the head down here. Same thing here, like here. Not this one, so we're going to alt over that and like that. It's a bit more shape to the guy, maybe too much when I did that. Okay. Now I'm going to go with a rough paint approach to this. I'm not going to go super detailed or working with very, very smooth gradients. That's not the goal here. The goal is to bring the concept forward and try to make you see how you could work it and figuring out for yourself how you would like to approach something like this when you're working on your own models. But I'm still going to put shadow underneath here because I consider these areas to be something where light maybe wouldn't strike, and also potentially on these ones as well, just so we get a bit of a depth. And as you can see already now, the snowman has been given a lot more, well, depth value. This is like a base shadow that's already hitting the little guy all over the body. It's a lovely over the body solution. Okay, I'll do that. And we're also going to do that on the surfaces below here, like so, and then up a bit on the insides like this. So why am I painting the insides like I'm currently down right here? Well, that's because I want to create a bit of like a circular shape. I wanted this not so super circular model to feel slightly more rounded. And you get that feel now. If you compare the white to before, this is much more round at first approach than it was when looking at the entire thing as the white rounded space. So essentially what I'm trying to achieve is a look that brings out the shape of a more round snowball on top of the character by kind of taking in consideration how these different textures affect different parts of the body. So that's an interesting way to think about it and how to approach it. So do that, do the potential. I can even go one further up here, potentially. Not sure, maybe. Maybe I'll just add a bit more extra color on this one as well. Just maybe, maybe baby. Like I saw, and like I saw. Yeah, we'll go with that. Face added, face has that, face value. Good, good, good. Potentially would like to add some shadow underneath here, but I'm not going to do that. Now on the armpits, why not add some shadow right there, just so that it happens a bit, so that you can kind of like guess that, well, where the arms are tucked in, it's somewhat a bit frozen, it's slightly colder, it's more watery in the snow. There we go with that. Now, a bit of a gradient under the eye doesn't really matter too much, so I'm gonna go with like just a slightly lighter one, and then a slightly lighter one again underneath there, just so that it happens a bit more. And then, of course, under the nose as well, also gonna add a bit of a gradient, like I did so. And we're gonna take the black, figure out where the eyes goes for this guy. Are they gonna go in here? It look really funny. No, we're gonna go with the eyes in by the center. I think that's the better one. Would he look a bit creepy if I were to give him like a yellow glow? Maybe. Slightly too alive. I think it's better if we keep to the dark blue. Maybe an even darker one. Yeah, like that maybe. You can kind of see that he's a friendly guy. He doesn't want to do anyone harm or stuff like that. It's just a friendly everyday snowman. Maybe he even has. And now I'm gonna deselect mirror painting because I want to see if I can make like a proper snowman mouth by clicking these about as I prefer. And yeah. Wow, somebody really had to go with you, didn't it? You look creepy beyond. Alright, regardless. Mirror painting back in again. Add some more to the side of the face like I saw, because I consider that's how potentially the eyebrow would have been connected. It's a bit more like frozeniness that goes onto that. And then of course also I need to add the shadow underneath the hat, because the hat is sitting on the top of the head. And then we can take this thing we're working on just currently or recently and add that as an extra shadow gradient underneath the hat as well. So as I said, no crazy shadows, just some very basic overall shading, so we get like a good idea what this guy is. So let's zoom out a bit, go back into edit so we can see the thing in action. Suddenly this snowman is much more alive than the previous one, and I haven't even started touching the arms with some cool effects or added depth, but you can see that it's already very alive just based on the fact that I added some extra color value down below. So let's go back into paint. Now I would like to bring some more white into it, and I left it with a slightly darker tint than white with the more blue, because then white shines better. So let's say I would like this part to glisten a bit. I'll add a bit like a highlight there, and like a highlight thing there. Maybe like a highlight on there. On here as well, maybe a highlight. Could go. Okay, now mirror painting, potentially doing some highlighting on the sides could be an interesting thing, just to kind of... And also notice how I am placing it in like a shape, an L shape. This L shape is supposed to represent the roundiness that these different figures would achieve by their shape. Same thing, gonna go over the head here and see if I can add some round shape feel to it. And deselect mirror painting, because I know if I mirror paint on the back, it's gonna be added on the front, and I don't want that to happen. So do that. We're gonna do the same thing on this one, and just like we did on the front with that one, we're also gonna do this on the back. So we're kind of repeating the system a bit. Okay, let's go into edit and take a look. Now we can see that the snowman has a lot of extra depth, just simply due to the fact we added that little white highlight. So this is a way you can approach your model, your texture, and give it more life without essentially breaking it down too much. Okay, let's see here now. Go for the arm. I want to have a bit of a darker shade on the arm at the very core of it. So I'm going to go and mirror paint select, not for the necessarily needed, but I'm going to do it regardless. So the first 3 pixels are going to be darker, like so. Then I'd like to go with a slightly brighter tone that is somewhere in between these two, just to get a gradient. I'm going to go 2 pixels that has that tone, like so, and then of course I'm going to go a slightly darker tone at the very, very base. Now I also have 4 different wood tones that I could use for the rest of the arm. That is interesting to know and also good to know. So on the left hand I know that this is where the finger goes, the thumb, and I think it could be kind of cool to give the thumb a bit of a pronunciation visually. And what I say by pronunciation, I mean that it's more visible that this is actually the thumb limb. It shows up, it has more attention brought to its color. And I can also of course add the darker in here. We go back to bringing the slightly brighter wood color right there, so we're adding like a bit of a knob to it, and then like so do a bit of a gradient, so where the stick is going out of the hand it happens a bit more to it. Okay, like so, like so, like so. And then we'll also make the tip slightly darker, so that it coexists with the approach that we did there. Now I could also take this and add a slightly darker tone to that. And over here, it's an interesting approach. How will I do with the fingers? Well, I would guess that going over the fingers like this would be the best way to go about it. But as I said before, I can't really paint the fingers on the inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, pull them apart. Same thing with the thumb for here. And since I have duplicated this hand to the other side, I don't need to do this on the other side. I just need to do it here so that I can see all of the limbs as they are, because they share the same textures. So when I'm doing this on this side, it'll automatically fill in the same effect on the other side. Lovely, right? Good stuff. All right, first one down there. And I can do like a second limby thing over here, like a so. Same thing for that one, like a so. Now we also want to add sure that this one is the same thing on that edge, that we have the bright here, and that the darker one is there, that the brighter one is there. I could also go with a slightly darker tone for this cap here, like so. Same thing in there. Good, darker there, darker there. Darker there. Are we any missing? Seems okay-ish for now. Maybe do this for that one. That's a cooler effect. It's a bit of like a more gradient approached look for it. Seems good. We'll do the same thing on this finger as well. Add a darker top to it. Bit of a gradient approach to that. Then we should of course also add a slightly smoother loop on that part, that end, and that is already there. Okay, good. Now I can remove it all back into, not remove it, but move it all back into position. I didn't move the folders, I only moved the squares within the folders, so all the limbs and things are working where they're supposed to be. Now, that doesn't look too shabby, does it? Well, I do see that I would like to add that. I think that looks really good. Snowman looks creepy. It has these fingers, which are to some extent visually articulated. You can kind of see where it's slightly darker, that's where the limb kind of switches. So if I were to select here and rotate, you could see that, whoops, this is sort of where the limb is put, which is an approach that I would like to have. Now, what I'm going to do though is to bring the pivot of these up one to the edge, because when you're working with limbs, usually, a bit like on your own finger, they have a certain point of where they're connected at. And in animation, we always try to account for that. And the way to do that is by putting, let's say for example, the knee. If I wanted to rotate the knee, it would be better for me to rotate the knee at the very outer edge of the kneecap instead of rotating it at the middle of inside the leg. Because if rotating at the middle of the side of the leg, as I'll give you an example here. If it's in the middle and I rotate it, then I'll break it open. But if I rotate it by moving the pivot to the very edge like this, I'll not break it open. And it'll rotate in a much more suitable, visible fashion. But regardless, it wasn't the cubes I was supposed to move around. It was the the folders. So let's do that instead. 2 up, left pointy, 2 up, right tipper donkey, put it 2 up, left a pinky, 2 up, hand. that one I'm gonna leave there because I think that's the better place for it. And the thumb, could donk it up like there. Good. Now we'll go to the other side. I'm gonna take this one and see right thumb tip needs to be over there in this folder. The right thumb needs to be there in this folder. And the same thing goes for the pointy. It could be over at the top. Tip could be over at the top. Right pinky could be over at the top. And of course the pinky finger as well could be over at the top. Now I think all of those at the right position. At the elbow, I'm going to do the same thing. At the elbow, not the cube, like so. And then at the same thing over here at the elbow, I'm also going to move it over here. Things to be in the right spot, not this cube though, forgot to move the thumb there. Okay, good. Now it seems like everything in its set position. We could play around with the snowman in a much more fun fashion. But I do think we are better off working on the animations in a separate video, and I'm also going to round up the hat, add a bit more depth to it as well, and some to the nose. But that would be in between these episodes, and when you're watching the next episode, it's time to give this guy some motion. And I hope that you have found interest in use of these episodes, one by one, trying to kind of teach you how to work with Blockbench, give you some inspiration on how to work with textures, how to work your way around the interface, how to model something out. But if there's anything that you think I'm missing out on, or you would like me to focus down on more in modeling or in concept ideas on how to approach textures or animation, if you want me to, for example, sit down and do a Photoshop episode and I'm just talking about textures and the way you think about shading and stuff like that, do tell me down in the comments. I'll be more than happy to look into that, because these are really fun to do, and it's all me trying to give to the community for the better good. Because you guys, you deserve having fun, learning, knowing, and exploring the potentials of Minecraft, just like I have done over all of these years playing that lovely, fantastic game. So, without further ado, let's me head off, and I'll see you in the next episode.